Hello and welcome to Thrive After 45, the podcast where we redefine the significance of you, for you, by you, because of you. My name is Denise Drinkwalter. I'm a midlife renewal coach here to help women embrace their power, purpose, and potential. This show is your space to explore what's possible when you prioritize you. Through inspiring conversations, expert insights, and real stories, we'll uncover how to navigate these transitions, rediscover joy, and thrive inside and out. It is time to let go of guilt and fully embrace the life that's waiting for you. This is the Thrive After 45 podcast. It is your time to thrive for you, by you, because of you. It is an absolute honor and a privilege to introduce and welcome Reverend Christine Davies to the Thrive After 45 podcast show. Reverend Christine is a Presbyterian minister, hospital chaplain, and spiritual director with nearly 20 years of experience walking alongside people through some of life's most sacred and vulnerable moments. As a seminary professor, she teaches future clergy how to offer meaningful spiritual care. And through her roles in hospitals, classrooms, and private practice, she has touched the lives of thousands of patients and hundreds of students. Reverend Christine brings a deep wisdom to the human experience, especially in the areas of grief, loss, and spiritual exploration. Whether guiding individuals through end-of-life care, helping someone reconnect with the divine after religious trauma, or supporting clients in creating rituals that bring meaning and healing, Christine's work is rooted in compassion, presence, and an unwavering respect for each person's unique spiritual path. Christine's voice is one of clarity, calm, and deep insight, and I am so excited for you to hear from her today. Christine, welcome to Thrive After 45.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's such an honor, and I am now going to bring you with me everywhere I go. So you can give me an introduction like that. That is so touching. So thank you. And I'm delighted to have this conversation with you.
You know, your work is so needed. And I am sure that with everything that is going on externally, that I know for me, people are finding new sources to find calm, peace, and, I'm going to say rooted
Mm.
understanding in terms of life. What is this all about? And I find it particularly true for, of course, the people that I work with is women in midlife,
Mhm.
but I know that it's across the board. People are starting to, there's more to life than this out here. How have you developed over the years to have such a gift of this capacity to reach so many varied people?
Mm. Yeah, it was something that I began really doing when I was an EMT in the backs of ambulances, listening to people in that way. And then I became a patient and was a little dismayed by the medical care that I received. And at the same time, the church I was attending had a new pastor who reached out to me and gave me some of that spiritual care that I was looking for. I was getting the physical care for my body, but I wasn't getting the totality of what it is to care care for the whole human spirit. And so that led me to seminary. And while I was in seminary, we had to do an internship in a hospital, and I fell in love with that. And that is what's led me here. And then so I should backtrack because not a lot of
Sure.
people know what a hospital chaplain is.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
or a spiritual director. I picked the two
Yeah.
careers that, on career day in school aren't really talked about much. My kids try to explain it to other people and they can't quite wrap their heads around what I do. So, as a hospital chaplain, I am an extra layer of emotional and spiritual support for patients while they are hospitalized, as well as the patient's families and the rest of the healthcare team. Because even if someone is hospitalized for something routine, hospitalizations can bring up all sorts of emotional
Mm,
impact. And then, certainly, a lot of the work that I do there is around bereavement and the piece that I do now is training other chaplains as well. So those seminary students and working as a professor. And then in the rest of my life, I work as a spiritual director, which was not something I had ever heard of until I went to seminary myself. And that is essentially having someone that you meet with. Usually, it's once a month with a spiritual director in person or on Zoom, and it's someone that just helps you listen to what the divine is doing in your life. So some of my clients come in and they say, I want to have a deeper connection with God, and I want to figure out how to do that. Others may come in and say, I don't like religion. There's a lot of toxicity in it. There's a lot of abuse, and I've heard lots of stories about that. So I completely understand how that comes up for people. And yet, here especially, I find after 45 are trying to figure out what is it that I do believe and what helps give my life meaning, as you mentioned before, and what are those rituals that can connect me with myself, with others, and with the world around me.
right, right. Could you share? You've tapped into two pieces here. You've talked about spirituality and you've talked about religion. Can we get not a definition, but more clarification around those? Because I hear a
Hmm.
lot of times those being interwoven or religion's way over here and spirituality. Can you help us with
Absolutely.
clarifying around
Yeah.
those pieces?
So I will give you the definitions. So the definitions
Sure.
I've come up with because there's so many different
I
definitions out there. So religion is an agreed upon set of rituals, practices, and beliefs held by a community for the sake of communing with the divine. So a lot of people, when they think of religion, think of houses of worship. They think of, what it is to be a Catholic, to be Jewish, to be Muslim. So that is religion. Spirituality is a much broader definition. It's how you connect to and explore the world within you and around you, and how you make meaning and find transcendence. So for some people, they get to that spirituality place through religion, and religion covers them, and they say, this is all I need. For some people, religion is a piece of their spirituality, but not all of their spirituality. And for some people, religion is not in the equation, and they are engaging in their spirituality in totally different ways. A rabbi friend of mine likes to phrase it this way, which I love. Spirituality is the map, and religion can be the route one takes to get there, but there can be lots of paths to where you're going.
Right. Okay. Makes a lot of sense. Um, I've had different conversations with people, and you do this work, I believe, is um, religious trauma is
Mhm.
how people reference it. I don't know if that's the accurate.
Mhm.
Okay, it is. Okay. So what when we talk about we use these broad brushstrokes, don't we? Just and I would love to get a better sense of what that actually means
Mhm.
and how people who are listening could decide, ooh, I think I do. That makes sense to me. I think I do have
Mhm.
trauma that's associated through the religion piece or whatever. So, can you share a little bit more around that so we get more clarity. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there, as your listeners know, there's so many different types of trauma that could be out there. There are things that have occurred sometimes in the name of religion that are crimes, right? Whether
Right.
that be physical abuse, sexual abuse, any sort of financial abuse in that way. So things that people could be hopefully, persecuted for and punished for and held accountable for. Um, the thing that I think is a little harder to explain sometimes around religious trauma is some of the emotional impact and the ways in which people have felt judged and shamed over the course of, their religious upbringing or their religious life, whatever that has looked like. And I find this, unfortunately, especially true for women,
Yeah.
because so many religious institutions are, patriarchal. And so
Right.
that is embedded kind of in the fabric of a lot of those religions, even though some have, come a long way.
Of course.
And sometimes it might be the house of worship itself. It might be a clergy leader. It might be a Sunday school teacher. It could be your parents. It could be something that you heard on TV. So sometimes it's about what was the messaging that you
Oh,
received and
sure.
how did that make you feel about yourself and or your relationship with God?
Okay. And then if somebody is listening, that's me. I
I'm sure
remember
a lot of people.
I remember the time and this is all
Mm-hmm.
going back to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what types of things now that we can, I mean, this is clearly surface conversation, but now
Yep.
that we can go, okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to move myself through this in a safe way so that I can come out the other side and not be emotionally scarred, permanently scarred,
Mm-hmm.
reactionary to what are some
Mm-hmm.
things that people who are listening, and we do have in the show notes, I believe, how we can connect with you. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what could we do?
Yeah, certainly you can reach out to me. I am open right now for clients to meet with me
Perfect.
individually. Um, Also, if I'm not a good fit, there are plenty of other
Yeah.
spiritual directors out there. So, Spiritual Direction International or Spiritual Directors International, it's SDI.org. There's a whole database. So, if you want to find someone who's a trained spiritual director, maybe you want to see someone in person and you don't live in New Jersey, so you can't
Yeah,
come see me.
sure.
There you can see people in person. You can also filter out. Maybe you do want to see someone of a specific faith tradition or someone that is a little bit more broad and intra-spiritual. So you can look and maybe you want to see a man, maybe you want to see a woman. You can look for all of those on there. So I would encourage you to consider that. Or some therapists, if you're already working with a therapist, they can
Sure.
entertain some of these issues if they have some, training within the realm of spirituality. Or if there is a faith leader that you trust to work through some of these. So I would say all of those would be good starting points. There's also some great kind of supportive communities on, yeah, I feel like on Facebook you can find any sort of group these days, but there
Yeah.
are some also within certain denominations or traditions as
Mhm.
well. So if you simply search, you can find something, or if you want something more specific, you can certainly reach out to me. And it's really about, I would say, even if you're just wanting to look at it on your own, I think the first step is, you know, what did you hear growing up? What was the theology or what were the beliefs or the values that you were kind of steeped in?
Yep.
And where is there a potential disconnect with how they are serving you? Because that's where I
Mm,
find a lot of my clients get tripped up. And sometimes what we do is we want to throw away the entirety of that religious experience because it was
yeah.
so negative.
Right.
And a lot of times what I'm working with clients to do is say, okay, maybe it wasn't all negative. Maybe there are pieces of that that were meaningful to you and you want to hold on to, but we have to then carefully parse that out to say, okay, what are you not taking from that experience and what do we need healing around?
I love that because it's I've done some recent lives and I've talked about, when you come and I'm going to, do a parallel here when you come home at the end of the day and you go in the door and how was your day? Oh, it was horrible. But really, when you take time to process, well, this was good and this was, oh, and that was good. It was this piece that was not good, but it's so impactful and we hold that negativity so deep that it
Mhm.
discolors everything else that was way better. And so I like what you're saying because taking the time to process that out is really key so that you don't dismiss everything. Or at the end of the day, you might decide, yeah, it really doesn't align with who I
Mm-hmm.
am now,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
having to reconstruct something completely that does meet where you are now. And
Yes.
as you were talking, I was just like, oh yeah, you're talking about essentially rewiring your brain to be able to have a different perspective. And one of the ways that we do that within spiritual direction is focusing on, gratitude practices. And those
Mm,
have been becoming a little bit more common now. But if we can think of even small micro gratitudes throughout our day, that's training ourselves to look for those and having that help shape our outlook.
yeah. So powerful. And the interesting part that I think is really important in this conversation is that it starts with ourselves, but we don't take that journey alone
Mm-hmm.
because when we're so close to the situation, it's hard for us to see all the pieces. So having that, was it, what was the title? I'm sorry, STI?
Oh, SDI, so
DI.
Spiritual
Okay.
Directors International.
Perfect. Yes. Having something like that that is vetted, I think is
Yep, people are
really
trained
important.
and to be
Yes.
listeners. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
have found sometimes, even though with my clients, they know their own story. Just the other day, someone's like, I've never said this out loud
Mm, of
before. And from coaching, like the
course.
power of naming something and
Yeah.
having someone else bear witness to it. And in some instances, having someone else say, yeah, what happened to you? That was not okay.
Yeah.
And that is not, what most people understand the divine to be, because that's the other really dangerous part of spiritual trauma or spiritual abuse is oftentimes we have um, these emotional either sayings or beliefs or behaviors that we without realizing it then attribute to the divine. Some people might call that God, some people might call that fate or the universe, but though, and then it's not just the person that said or did these terrible things, but we almost substitute God into that. And so that's what we're wanting to really help people to parse out.
And do you find that it's a journey that is varied amongst your clients? Like there's no, okay, 3 months and we'll have it, right? It's like,
I
woo!
know. I wish it were that easy.
I totally,
Oh,
right?
it's this lifelong thing. I was telling someone the other day. I was like, yeah, our stuff is always going to be our stuff. It just comes up in new and different ways. But I do think that we can develop tools and practices that really get us to where we want to be, within our spiritual lives and what that could look like for each one of us. And it's going to be different for everyone. That's the other thing that people are surprised by. So I will walk people through different practices. So we talked about gratitude. Sometimes we'll do different types of meditation, silence or embodiment work, just to name a few different things. And for some people, this thing is going to work great. And for others, they're like, nope, that's not for me. Or this might work in this season. And then in a different season, particularly
Yes.
for people who are in like the throes of grief or suffering, it may have to be something a lot gentler to help them get through that period.
Right. Do you find some people don't even know that what they're going through is a grief period? Has that ever
Mhm.
surfaced where it's
Oh,
like,
yes.
okay,
Yeah. Well, I believe, so I have a controversial opinion when it comes to grief.
that's okay.
I believe that we are all grieving something at any given time. And so even your listeners might be thinking, well, nothing major has happened to me recently. But we have losses constantly
Yeah.
because change in our life is constant. And anytime there's a change, even a much wanted change, even if someone gets married or gets a promotion, there is still some loss there. They're not working with the same people. Maybe they have to move or they're not as close with other friends as a result. Um, but there's all these different types of losses that society doesn't always identify. And then that brings about grief. So we've gotten better as a society at naming relationship loss or loss when it comes to end of life. But we don't talk about the losses of identity, the losses of material possessions, the losses of, bodily functions and everything that can bring up for people. And so, our grief is going to vary in terms of our acuity to it. But I do believe it's always there and usually underneath the surface. If we just scratch a little bit, we tend to find it.
Thank you for sharing that because this will be on the podcast, but I'm smiling because I'm like, yes, loss. We talk about this a lot. Women in midlife years, they're everything from physicality
Mhm.
to family units where children, which is what we always want. We want the
Hmm.
kids to, I mean, that was always our dream. The kids grow up and out you go,
Yep, leave
little
the
birdie,
nest.
fly. Yep, there you go. And
Hmm.
you're like, what? I didn't want it now. These
Hmm.
changes are massive. And yes, we know it's coming. Yes, we prepare ourselves, whatever that looks like, sounds like, feels like. And then
Hmm.
it still can hit us. So thank you for
Hmm.
sharing that. I totally I love what you're saying about grief and it's always under the surface. It's always there. It's
Yeah,
part
I
of the
think it's
growth.
important to normalize because
Yeah.
otherwise people think something's wrong with them
It's bad.
when these things happen. I'm like, no, 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 this is normal. I certainly when people become empty nesters, I've seen it a lot when people retire.
Yeah.
Just that sense of it almost seems like just like the rug has sometimes gotten pulled out from underneath people, and then they are judging themselves rather than saying, "Oh no, this is a loss. This is something to grieve."
Yeah. Thank you for that. I love what you're saying, and the piece that really resonates with me takes me into the idea and what I do find with a lot of the women that I support is that there's a newfound trying to find ourselves, not
Hmm.
through the roles we've played, but who we
Hmm.
are as a person. Now we have the time and space to do it because
Hmm.
our our focus has changed. And I do find, and I don't know if you find this, but I find in particular there's a fear behind figuring out, well, I need to know what my purpose is. And they're looking outside instead of pulling in with that spirituality piece and
Hmm.
religion, however it pulls together for them. Do you notice the same
I
or?
I do see a fair amount of that because I think particularly as you said for women, our identity has been um, often related to caregiving in some form or fashion, how, whatever that looks like for your own
Mhm.
life. And we're used to putting out for others and not actually paying attention to, oh, what is it? That I would say, what is it that my soul craves? We don't know. We're not used to asking that question. I remember recently talking to a client. I said, well, what would you do if you just had an hour to yourself? And she couldn't come up with anything. She's like, I don't need laundry, a nap. Like it was just so unheard of for her to be able, and she's in a different season of life where things are a little chaotic at the moment,
Mhm.
but wanting to be able to find meaning in new and different ways.
It's so interesting. That's why the thrust of our show, we need to do things for you, by you, because of you.
Mhm.
And I am a huge proponent of doing small things every single day. So if, like
Mhm.
you say, an hour,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
talk about half a minute. What can you
Mhm.
do just for yourself for half a minute, even if it's sitting
Mhm.
holding a tea? Like,
Yep. I'll sometimes have the same conversation because a lot of my clients think that, oh, I have to read, a Bible or devotional
Yeah.
for 45 minutes, or I have to sit and meditate,
Yeah.
for all this time. I say spiritual practices can be simple. It can be, I was talking with someone who's going through something major. I'm like, maybe just light a candle once a day.
Yeah.
Like that, that's all you do right now. Or sometimes it's about what am I already doing that I can
Right.
infuse more intention in, right? So I like to talk about drinking my coffee because that is my
Yeah.
vice. I love coffee.
Yep.
I could drink it while, checking my work email, yelling at my kids, trying to get them off to school, running in myself and not even tasting anything and,
Right.
and having to microwave it a bunch of times. Or I could sit with it on my back porch, listening to the bird song, just noticing, all of the flavor profiles of the specialty beans that we buy, and start my day that way. And so
Yeah.
it's the same exact action, but it's a totally different intention. Now, don't get me wrong, most of my days do look like that
Of
scattered,
course.
because we don't get it right all the time. But I think the idea is that I like to call it spiritual habit stacking. You can take things that you are already doing and infuse a moment of sacredness in it.
I love that. And like you say, it doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be, I have to go study this now and block off all that time because that added stress. And when you're adding
Mhm.
stress, it's not going to be aligned,
No, women do
right?
not need more things on their to-do list. We have
Nope.
enough.
Exactly. So think about what you're doing now that can give back to you and don't
Mm.
add, but just stay intentional in that particular moment. Yeah. Such a great conversation. So good, Christine. Is there anything you would love to leave our listeners with as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I would just encourage you to, really be gentle with yourself if you
Yep.
have been a victim of that religious trauma and abuse that we've talked about, knowing that even listening to this may stir some of that up for you.
Yep.
And so, give yourself kind of some of that graciousness that you would give someone else, that you would give a friend of yours, and then to reach out to support whatever that looks like.
Right. Thank you so much. It has been an honor and a privilege sharing this space with you and learning from you.
Oh, thank you so much
Continue,
for having me.
please continue to do the wonderful work that you do. And in the show notes, will be able to reach out and find Christine. And I want to thank all of our listeners. Make sure that you follow Thrive After 45, the podcast that will help you change your life and give time back for you, by you, because of you, because you're not only worthy, but you are deserving of taking time every single day for yourself. Take care of yourselves, and we will talk to you next time. Goodbye, everyone.